What's up, guys? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by PrizePicks. Got some play-in game action, so it's pretty cool in the NBA these days. We got 6 additional games in the postseason, and maybe some interesting strategies since the stakes are very high in these ones. Fortunately, we got the perfect guy to help us break these down. Adam, Ship My Money Share. Adam, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty well. Enjoying basketball that matters again. Still kind of got some weird rotations last night that I didn't expect, but it's nice going into games, like knowing the teams really care about winning, and even more so tonight than last night because it's one and done for these guys.
Yeah, that's a good point. So obviously the 7 and 8 seed play winner advances, but the loser still gets another shot. These 9 and 10 seeds, if they lose, they're out of the playoffs or not making it to the playoffs. The winner has to do it twice to get that 8 seed. So a little bit of a tough road for these teams to make the playoffs. Obviously, we know that. Well, I guess none of these guys necessarily have to make the playoffs if they all lost to the loser last night's games, but certainly they're going to be very motivated. I mean, we saw Patrick Beverley last night really take pride in their team winning the play-in game. I saw everyone on Twitter was reacting. Like, I totally missed this. Like, what happened there?
Minnesota just acted like they had won like a title, but like I didn't really get the negative reactions to it. Like, yeah, it was it was an unusual reaction, and they, I guess like you could say they went overboard in that like it was just an unusual reaction to winning a playing game, but like also it's not like the Timberwolves have a history of being a very good team. Like I'm sure those fans absolutely loved it and were really into it. Like I remember back when the Orioles were briefly good in like the 2010s, and like they would play home playoff series, like it was just an insane atmosphere. Like I don't know, I thought it was pretty cool just like seeing the emotion from the players, seeing how into it the fans were. I don't know, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hate someone for caring about what they do, and like a Minnesota Timberwolves, like we're by no means like at the start of the season guaranteed to make the playoffs. I think that is a decent accomplishment by them. So I think like it is what it is. You guys all have your own opinions, but did you take away anything from last night's DFS contest as far as how to approach the play-in games tonight?
Not really. I mean, I think that strategy wise, it pretty much went how I would expect. There were a couple of spots where ownership was a little bit different than like I expected it to be. Seth Curry, for example, was way more popular, at least in high stakes, than I had anticipated. Norman Powell was actually more popular than I had anticipated in high stakes as well. But also I guess with it being a 2-game slate, that's going to happen just because there's like obviously everybody's ownership is driven up anyway. So if the field is just projecting somebody 1 or 2 points higher than you have them or than you're anticipating them to, it's going to change the ownership quite a bit.
Definitely. Yeah, especially with the kind of like condensed player pools with some of the bench guys not really being playable and not really too much value since like the higher price guys are the ones that are going to get even more minutes while the lower price guys are going to get fewer minutes than a regular season game. So you see a lot of ownership around very uh, interesting value plays. Like last night, it was Jared Vanderbilt that was super high owned. Tonight, I'm seeing names like Herb Jones, DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Herter. Like these guys are actually pretty decent. So uh, I guess we'll get into which value plays maybe going over or under owned as we get to the game by game breakdown.
Yeah. One thing, just from like a general standpoint, I think is different about tonight is that the pricing, at least on DraftKings, is softer than it was last night. So like last night, you kind of got forced on to like, you mentioned Vanderbilt, and that was somebody that, he was kind of like the only really underpriced starter at 3,900. And so like you knew that there was risk there, but it was also just like, what are you going to do pivot wise that makes, that makes sense. Tonight, you don't have anybody above $10,800 on DraftKings. You have a number of starters or regular rotation players that are sub 4K. So I do think you're going to have a little bit more opportunity to like make pivots off of chalk without going completely off the board, like you kind of had to last night if you were going to be different.
Yeah, that's a good point. There do seem to be some cheaper plays tonight, where not all the ownership is condensing on one or two players. So it should be interesting. Guys, hit the thumbs up button. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can keep up with all our shows, get them in your feed. And while you're at it, we got a lot of free content today on the site. MLB player projections, NBA ownership projections, NHL top stacks, and PGA top golfers, as well as the podcast giveaway. So make sure to check all those out on awesemo.com. Let's get to Charlotte. Let's see. Charlotte, they what are you looking at here? Because we kind of know the regulars. We know LaMelo, Terry Rozier. How do you think they change up the rotation at all now that it's a elimination game?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not expecting Isaiah Thomas to be in the rotation. I don't know, maybe he's tonight's Rajon Rondo, but I'm not expecting that. But I do think that you still get Oubre, Cody Martin, and Jalen McDaniels all in the rotation off the bench along with Harrell. Harrell's someone that, like, in some matchups, you could see him disappear. Like even towards the end of the season, you saw a game or two where he wasn't in the rotation. But here against a Clint Capella and Okongwu front court, I expect that you're getting, 16 to 18 minutes from Harrell off the bench, which you and I kind of mentioned before the show that he's getting a lot of ownership. And, I think that makes sense at 3,500. But I'm expecting the rotation to be, the five starters and then Harrell, Oubre, Martin, and McDaniels. So I am expecting a 9-man rotation here.
Nice. So no Isaiah Thomas. I think that's a good call. I'm kind of wondering, so I'm trying to figure out, because in these elimination games, certain players get more minutes than they usually do. And the guys I've observed getting that kind of run throughout the regular season are Terry Rozier and Miles Bridges, often playing up to 40 minutes in regular season games. So I'm thinking that the coach is maybe going to run those guys out a lot more tonight, them being, not big. So I don't expect fatigue to really factor in. Then you get to LaMelo Ball. I feel like the coach is a lot less confident in LaMelo's skills, and he's often not closing in games and stuff. Them opting to go with some more consistent players. So LaMelo is someone I'm not expecting a huge bump in minutes on an average game. So what are you thinking with those three guys, Rozier, Bridges, and Ball?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm still high on Ball. I still think he plays like upper 30s in minutes, but I do think that projecting him a little bit behind Bridges in terms of playing time makes sense, just because we've seen him have foul trouble this year too, and we know that in a winner take all game, Charlotte shouldn't be benching Ball if he picks up a couple of fouls early, but you also can't guarantee that they won't, because coaches like to do that. So, I think that expecting somewhere from 38 to 40 minutes from Bridges and then maybe 36 to 38 from LaMelo makes sense. I would say Rozier around 38 minutes makes sense as well. But I think all three of those guys look good. Bridges and Rozier look a little bit better just because they're really inexpensive. 7,100 for Bridges on DraftKings, 6,800 for Rozier. Whereas Ball at 9,700, I still think he looks good. But the issue you run into there is that he's less than $1,000 below Trae Young. He's $1,100 below DeJounte Murray. Those guys I think are just on a little bit higher tier, but then he's also $700 more than CJ McCollum, who I think looks very similar to LaMelo in terms of projection. So it makes it so in cash, I don't think I would get to LaMelo, but I do think that maybe you can use him a little bit more in tournaments, because he is only getting 29% ownership, where some of these other guys are getting quite a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it is a little bit harder to spend up in the playoffs too, because Rozier and Bridges at their price points, Rozier being 6,800, Bridges at 7,100, you can fit them in kind of any lineup. To get Ball in, you need to fit in the value plays, which might not be as exciting today. Let's look at PJ Washington, the starting power forward. He is someone that towards the start of the season, he'd be getting minutes at center. So that dynamic shifted eventually with Montrezl Harrell getting the backup center role, as well as some other guys like Nick Richards and JT Thor, like also participating at center throughout the season. So PJ Washington recently has mostly been playing at the four. His rates have suffered a lot because of that. Um, and I'm just wondering how you feel like he like stacks up compared to the other guys on his team. Like, is this a guy that's going to get more playoff run? Is he just going to get the start, and then whoever is playing best is going to be closing? How do you think the coach feels about PJ Washington?
Yeah, to me, I think it's one of the bigger question marks because, like, you know that Ball, Bridges, Rozier, barring foul trouble or anything, are going to get run. If you told me like that PJ Washington played 36 minutes and you took minutes away from Kelly Oubre or Cody Martin or Jalen McDaniels, it wouldn't be shocking. But I also just don't really have confidence in that happening. So I think that like if you give Washington around 30 minutes, he still projects close to 5x. And he's someone that you can get to, you can get to here and there. He's projected for 20% ownership. We have him with a 16% chance of being in the optimal lineup. I think all of that makes sense, but I do think there is at least some minutes volatility because it's a situation where I have my educated guess of what the rotation is going to look like, but there is, I think, volatility here where maybe Washington plays more backup center at Harrell's expense than I'm expecting, or maybe McDaniels or Martin or Oubre play fewer minutes than I'm expecting. So there is at least some volatility there, which is nice in tournaments at relatively low ownership. Like you said, though, the rates are down when he plays the four, so like the ideal like good break, I guess, in tournaments would be like if he takes minutes from Harrell and he just plays way more center than we're expecting. That would be like the best case scenario for PJ Washington, and it could happen, but I don't think it's particularly likely. But he is cheap enough where even in 30 minutes, I think he's okay. And then knowing that there is the some percent chance we're just wrong and he plays more does make him somewhat appealing at low ownership.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of thinking there is a chance of what you're saying where he gets more of the backup center at Harrell's expense. It's tough to really plug that in because that hasn't happened during the regular season in the recent games. There's also the matchup where Atlanta plays pretty big. If they do start Gallinari today at the four, which I think is most likely, then he's with PJ Washington is probably a good matchup, and it's like they might not want to go with the smaller guy. Um, all in all,
To
how do
me,
you?
the biggest concern with Harrell, like I mentioned that I thought you would see Harrell because of Atlanta playing a center. The flip side to that is Trae Young's a very high frequency pick and roll guy, and he could make Montrezl Harrell look really bad. And like that's an issue that Montrezl Harrell's had in the playoffs before, back when he was like with the Clippers, is that he just becomes a liability defensively against pick and roll and playoff offenses. So I do think that that's kind of there's two sides to it. Yeah, we don't expect Atlanta to go small at the five, but you also could just basically get Harrell played off the court potentially.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Like there are games in the last month where Harrell only played like 10 minutes. So there is a lot of downside with Harrell. He's coming in our ownership projections at 28% owned. I feel like, okay, so like based on our projection, that's about the right ownership. But like there's a little bit of a subjective factor here where maybe like a scenario like we're describing happens. It's really tough to like put a number on that. Like how likely do you think it is that Harrell does see a lot less minutes because it is playoffs?
Yeah, like it's tough because I mean Charlotte was playing meaningful games down the stretch and he was still typically in the rotation. So I think it's it's greater than 50-50 that they just roll with him and throw him out there. But I just like the matchup, the Trae Young aspect of this is what concerns me. Like you could just get a situation where Harrell can't be out there, and that would be a problem. I don't think it's like super likely because I think that they're going to try and go to Harrell, but I am just concerned because of what has happened to him in the postseason before.
Definitely. Thanks, Abel, for the super chat. He says, "What percent is considered low owned on this slate?" I would say like most of the plays that are pretty reasonable are in the double digits. So maybe teens or lower is low owned. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're just like generically saying low owned, it's kind of like when I see plays that I like that are like 20%, it seems like that's low owned. I do think if you're a subscriber to the site, using the boom bust tool is a really easy way to quantify that, because it's more so, if I don't care if somebody's quote unquote low owned as much as I care if they're not as popular as they should be. So that can kind of help to quantify low ownership as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, low owned, you don't want to pick someone because they're just low owned. You want them to have a good chance of success. So boom bust definitely helps figure that out, because there are certain guys like maybe like John McDaniels is a good example on Charlotte, where 5% owned, 3% optimal. Like obviously the theory behind this play would be, if you go with a couple of guys at this price point, it's just the other guys carrying you to victory. There are some cheaper guys that probably will play more though. So I know a big question is going to be like, how do we get a little bit different so we avoid massive chop for first, where first is like 100K and you get $300. So in general, like how do you try to avoid some of those most heavily owned lineups?
I think that you're just kind of trying to balance your projection and your ownership, or your projection and your chances of success in your ownership. So like, again, for me, that's where the boom bust tool really comes in handy, because I don't want to, especially in NBA, like I don't try that hard to like completely avoid dupes, because it's just so difficult in NBA to like find some, especially on a 2-game slate, some like unowned guy that actually has a chance of doing well. Because if he actually has a chance of doing well, like he's not going to be unowned, unless it's like Isaiah Thomas and he just plays 16 minutes for God knows what reason. But assuming something like that doesn't happen, there's only so many things you can do in NBA, as opposed to a sport like baseball, where you could just grab like a 9-hitter and say, yeah, he's still going to do okay once in a while. But so I do think that kind of just accepting that a lot of times you're going to dupe at least somewhat, I kind of can just live with that. But still, just kind of trying to balance your chances of success with getting as under-owned or as low-owned the lineup as you can without really sacrificing too much.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I was getting started in fantasy, like it was during NBA playoffs, and I'm like, how do I get different? So I'm like, I'm gonna play Shane Battier, and this is like on the Heat. But then like when you actually learn more about fantasy, it's like you can play Shane Battier, and like that doesn't mean your lineup is going to be like not duplicated, because like everyone is trying to like pick some of those guys that are like likely to get minutes but not great fantasy producers because they are low owned. So
yeah, that's a good point too, especially on the 2-game slates. Like if there is again, like using the Isaiah Thomas example, where because I think like on this slate he's the one guy where it's like I don't expect him to play, but at 3,200, if for some reason he does, like he's kind of tonight's Rondo, where he would do well. But like there's going to be enough people that like say, oh well, I'm going to use Isaiah Thomas, where yeah, he's low owned, but like all of the Isaiah Thomas lineups are going to look exactly the same.
yeah, totally. One other factor that is like super underrated is if you play on FanDuel, they introduced the multi-position eligibility this season. And like what that does is that massively increases the number of possible lineups, which means each lineup is going to be less duplicated. On DraftKings in the past, like even in a 2-game NBA slate, the dupes weren't like egregious, especially tonight's big tournament's only like 23,000 entries. So like I don't think you have to get like too crazy, because there are a lot of good possible lineups. Now on FanDuel, like that used to be the case, that there are a lot less possible lineups, so you could get off the board with leaving money on the table and stuff like that. You just have to like nail like the positional element of it. But now that's not really the case with all the MPE. So have you changed up your strategy at all on FanDuel this season in small slates?
I think I've played FanDuel like once all season. So no, but like I do agree with everything you're saying there as far as MPE just reducing the number of dupes. A good point. Josh Gill made a good point in chat too. It's something that I think we've talked about sort of like at other times this year, but he said, I think you can get different by playing 4 players from the same team. It doesn't have to be that one random low owned guy. And yeah, roster construction is another way you can do it. Like, because there's always some percentage of people that are just going to set rules that make it so they don't play, a lineup that has 4 guys from the same team or whatever. And on bigger slates, you're not doing that because the opportunity cost for every position for the spots in your lineup are higher. But on a 2-game slate, there's only so many guys you can play. So whether you're saying, okay, like I'm willing to play 4 guys from the same team, or if you're willing to play like Mason Plumlee and Montrezl Harrell together or something like that, it's not optimal in the sense that like they're not going to share the floor and they negatively correlate. But in some ways, when you get to a 2-game slate, I think it's kind of it can be advantageous in other ways because like a large percentage of the field is just going to flat out say like, yeah, I'm not playing those 2 dudes together. So if you do happen to get Plumlee plays well for 22 minutes, Harrell plays well for 18, then you've gotten 2 good value plays, and there's just not a high percentage of lineups that have them together.
Good point. Yeah, it's all about finding some angle that means your lineup's going to be a little less owned. I know in NBA Showdown that was kind of a popular strategy where like maybe you pick receivers without the quarterback or something. It's like the chance of your lineup going off is a lot less, but then there's a lot less duped as well. I'm a little bit iffy on that strategy just because I don't have enough confidence that people are gonna like act like completely smart in that regard and avoid all the negative correlations, to be honest. But
Yeah, the NFL Showdown example is a perfect one because that was when I first started playing NFL Showdown. I was really heavy into setting rules to make sure that like all of my lineups correlated as much as they could. And then like every slate, I'm looking at like the solo winner for like 300K, and I'm just like, I literally would not let Fantasy Cruncher build that lineup for me. And after a few weeks of it, it was just like, okay, I think that there's maybe more money to be made by just accepting that like there's still a ton of variance and maybe you're at least allowing for some negative correlation, some not perfect lineups in terms of like the story they're telling. It can be outweighed just by like how much money you can win because you're not duped as much.
definitely a good exercise you can do is after tonight's slate, just look at how many lamps were the same as yours. Download the CSV if you're on DraftKings or on FanDuel. You can kind of like scroll and see how many people have the same score. And that'll give you a good idea how your strategy is working as far as avoiding the dupes. All right. Thanks for the super chat. My filler arc. He says, wait, so I won't win the Charlotte with the Charlotte starters plus Harrell, Thomas, and Martin. Cool hat, Alex. Thanks, man. I feel like I don't usually take advantage of the 6 max on DraftKings from one team. Like I think it's probably a good strategy to like have fewer guys from the same team in your lineup, barring like crazy value. But as you're saying, maybe a little less popular to do that. So what's your stance on that?
Yeah, I mean, I still typically have a really difficult time getting the 6 from the same team. On 2-game slates, I do occasionally get the 5, especially if you just have like a favorably priced team. For example, Charlotte, like you have an underpriced Bridges, a clearly underpriced Rozier, but then like still decent pricing on cheap guys like Plumlee, Harrell, one of the guys off the bench. Like if you're playing 150 lineups, I could conceivably see having like a team that has like Bridges, Rozier, Washington, Plumlee, Oubre or something, and it not being the end of the world. I do in those cases like to try and actually bring it back with somebody from the other team. Like typically, I don't care that much about runbacks in NBA, but that is a situation where I do like it a little bit more, just because you're kind of putting yourself in the situation where the best case scenario for you is that one game ends up being very competitive and one game ends up just not being competitive, and so you end up basically just forcing a game stack. So in Fantasy Cruncher you can do that. You can just say like if more than 4 or if more than 5 players from one team, then play guys from the other team too.
Nice. That's a good strategy just because like if one team is performing really well from a fantasy standpoint, like for that to get the full minutes, you need the other team to keep up. So thanks to Orat14 for the super chat. He says, one team for $1 million single entry. Which 2 guys are you starting? One of my guys tonight would be Devin Vassell. And then second guy, I'm kind of feeling Joe Val. How about yourself?
I like Joe Val in tournaments a lot. Like I think it's gonna be kind of difficult to get to him, but he's still, and obviously we'll talk about it more when we get to the Pels, but he's someone where I think that there's a lot of minutes volatility there, and he's also a really good point per dollar guy. And then on top of that, like if he does have his best game, it's probably cutting into some combination of McCollum and Ingram at least a little bit. And we know that those guys are both going to be like twice as popular as Jovel is. So he just kind of like covers a lot of bases where it's difficult to get to him, but I do like the idea of him in tournaments quite a bit. I also am somewhat interested in Onyeka Okongwu, just because I do think people are going to go to Harrell more than him. And if you do get that situation where Harrell plays, several minutes less than people are expecting, you could get, like if you get 16 minutes from Okongwu or 17 minutes from Okongwu and 12 from Harrell, there's a really good chance that you're coming out ahead with Okongwu.
Definitely. I think that is reasonable possibility. So we'll get to that game in a little bit here. We got a $1 MLB Express Pass promo going on, so you can check out some MLB DFS on our site. It's only valid through today, but it includes our rankings, ownership rankings, lineup builder, and Discord. You can use the promo code FASTBALL to get that $1 pass. Just go to awesemo.com/promos. That makes it easy. And they'll let you get some MLB DFS action and hopefully win some money. And you want to get the full thing here. So, all right, let's go to Atlanta. You mentioned Okongwu, so let's start at center. I think Capella has been pretty amazing from a fantasy standpoint. There was a point down the season where it felt like Onyeka Okongwu was challenging his minutes. However, in the last game, Capella has been pretty steady in minutes. Looks like last game was blowout, so that one didn't really matter. But Capella, I found out the hard way betting all the unders on his rebounds that he is indeed getting a lot of rebounds too. But Capella, like it does feel like center is one of the spots where people are trying to get some value. So how are you handling him today?
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned the Kongwu, and I guess to clarify, like, I guess I wasn't totally answering that question. Like, I don't know that he would be in my single entry for $1 million, but I do just like the idea of him as a lower own value play because, like you said, I think that people are going to pay down at center quite a bit, and he is getting less ownership than Harrell. But the flip side of that is that with people paying down, going to Capella is one way that you can just be, a little bit different. Where not only is he just not getting that much ownership, we have him at 24% on DraftKings, but it's also kind of going to just force you onto a different build since so many people are likely to pay down at the center position. And I do think that there's volatility there too, because not only is it a good matchup and he's a good point per dollar guy, I think the best guess at Capella from a projection standpoint is something like 30 or 31 minutes, but he could, like, if you told me he played 36, I wouldn't be shocked. It's a one game playoff. Like, Capella could easily just play a ton of minutes. We haven't seen him do that like at all in the regular season, so I don't think you can project it. But I do just always like guys that are good point per minute, and that it's not like a crazy thought that they just play like 4 minutes more than I'm expecting.
Yeah, definitely. If Capella got more minutes because it's playoffs, I don't think anyone would be shocked. So I think that the volatility is there. Okongwu, I think you mentioned, is a nice little value piece. It does look like his ownership isn't as low as you might expect in our projected ownership, which is true today, 17.6%. But the optimal rate is about that same amount. So definitely a piece that you can mix in there. Now let's talk about the rest of the team. John Collins remains out. So Gallo, he's gotten the start most games. Timothy Luau-Cabarrot started over him a few times, but it felt like that was more matchup based with PJ Washington starting for Charlotte. We're assuming. Then you gotta think Gallo's gonna start, and he's played a lot of minutes in the last 3 games. So, what are you expecting out of Gallinari tonight?
Yeah, Atlanta's, as a whole, I just don't know what to do with this team, like in terms of minutes, because normally in a game like this, you would just give a ton of minutes to the main guys. But, Gallo, Bogdanovich, Herter, Hunter, like these guys are all so similar. And we just haven't typically seen, massive minutes out of them, that I have a hard time just like pointing to any of them and saying like, oh yeah, he's going to go play 38, 40 minutes, but they're also cheap. Like if you just assume that they're playing 30 to 32 and that they could conceivably play a few more, they're still going to show up in a lot of lineups. Gallo at 5,200. Yeah, his usage rate comes down a bit playing alongside Trae Young, but playing time also goes up, being in the starting lineup. Bogdanovich, I assume, will come off the bench again. In the games that he has played without Collins and with Young, he has a 24.5% usage rate. He's a little over a fantasy point per minute guy, only 5,700. He's going to get into a lot of lineups. Hunter's just really cheap for someone that could, play mid 30s. I expect them to want him out there defensively, and then he's around a 20% usage guy as well. Herder could certainly play a little bit more with it being the postseason. So I like all of the wings for Atlanta. I think it's kind of just mixing and matching them. Bogdanovich, though, is the one that stands out to me the most.
Nice.
So actually, I'll say Bogdanovich stands out the most in terms of projection. I think Hunter stands out the most in terms of he's just a lot cheaper than the rest of them.
Well, I'm not going to let you off of that easy on just picking one of these three guys. So let's dig into each one individually here. Now, Bogdanovich, I'm surprised that you're saying that he's the guy that you're keying in on, since he does come off the bench. He has been playing a lot of minutes, like about 30 a night. But are you concerned, like, for him to get in the game, like one of these other starters has to get less minutes? Like if Bogdanovich plays more minutes, I would think so. Like are you thinking he gets more minutes in the playoffs, and like who would those minutes be kind of like siphoned from?
Yeah, like I don't know who specifically they come from, but I think Bogdanovich is very likely to be in the closing lineup, especially if they're playing, if it's a competitive game or if they have to be playing from behind. But I think he's this, like, I expect him to be the second highest usage guy on the team behind Young. I don't view him coming off the bench as a negative because he does close so frequently, and he's averaged about 30 minutes per game in the games without Collins and with Young. So I kind of just view it as more of like a rotational thing where he's good with the ball in his hands. He can be out there. They want him out there for, whatever minutes Young is not on the floor, but then he's still capable of playing alongside him as well. He's not a bad shooter. So I really like the ceiling that Bogdanovich gives. He also has shooting guard small forward eligibility, which is nice. Gallo's only a power forward. Hunter's only a small forward. Herder also has shooting guard and small forward, but he's not as good a point per minute guy as Bogdanovich, and I expect them to play similar minutes.
Nice. So let's get to the Hunter here. Like I had high hopes for DeAndre Hunter like to start the year, because last year he actually had a really good season. This year the true shooting has been a little disappointing. He's only at 55% for the year. I guess he might have but it seems a little bit higher than I remember. I think he was at 60% last year. But it's still solid enough, and I assume they like his defense as well. So not a tremendous fantasy producer, but he does show as a positive value, being only 4,300. So I think a lot of people are going to click him just because he's the guy that fits, that's starting. How confident do you feel in Hunter?
Pretty confident. Just because, like you said, he does add a lot defensively, so it makes a lot of sense for them to want him on the floor, barring foul trouble or anything like that. And like you said, he's not a great point per minute guy, but he's not horrible either, and it is a good spot. About a 19.5% usage rate in the games he's played without Collins and with Young. So I do think that where like Gallinari is a little bit underpriced, Herder, maybe a little bit underpriced, I think the gap's a little bit bigger for Hunter, just because, again, I expect him to play similar minutes to those guys, and you're getting a pretty sizable discount.
No, Herder, very solid player. He's also cheap at 4,900, also looking to be popular. So is he another guy that you can kind of just it looks like the ownership's only 33%. That's not egregious. So is he just kind of a guy that if he fits, like you're happy to roll with Herder?
Yeah, it's just a situation where like I think I like Hunter. I like all of the other guys a little bit more than Herder for one reason or another. Gallinari, I think, just projects a little bit better. Hunter is a better point per dollar value. I think Bogdanovich projects better. But the thing with Herder is, like, when you look at the ownership of the rest of the Hawks, not that it's a huge gap, but 33% coming to Herder, 40 to Bogdanovich, 40 to Gallo, 40 to Hunter. Not a huge difference, but still within any given lineup, it can make sense to just say, like, okay, I already have a little bit more ownership than I want on these guys, so I'll make Gallinari into Herder instead, or I'll make Bogdanovich into Herder, in this particular lineup. So I think he's useful that way. I think that, like, if you were just putting together your top projected lineup, he would be least likely of those 4 wings to get in. But I do think that's going to just make him be a little bit lower owned as well.
Nice. And then finally, Trae Young, last but not least. You'd think that they're going to want him out on the court as much as possible. So I'm pretty bullish on the minutes. He is expensive at 10.6K, so that really affects the rest of your build. How much Trae Young are you getting to?
I think I'll get to a lot. I think he's neck and neck with DeJounte Murray for the highest projected guy on the slate. And like you were saying before, it is difficult on playoff slates to pay up because you don't have as much good value. And then you also, at least with the way this slate is set up, you have such good mid-range guys, whether it's McCollum or Ingram or LaMelo or Bridges or Rozier or Capella, Pirtle. Like there's so many good mid-range guys where you can just say like, okay, well, I'm not going to get to Trae Young and I'll play, these mid-range guys, but he still just has such a massive ceiling here. I mean, it's a favorable matchup against Charlotte. He's averaged about a fantasy point and a half per minute without John Collins. I expect him to play a ton of minutes here. Usage could certainly go up in the postseason as well. Like there's outside of Bogdanovich, nobody on this team is high usage. So like in the postseason, it shouldn't be surprising if you just see Trae Young even more, being even more aggressive than usual. So I do like getting to Young, and I do think that this slate does at least offer a little bit more value than yesterday's did.
Definitely. One of the most popular value pieces on today's slate is actually Trae Young's backup, Delon Wright. Now, I think that there's some merit to this because you'd think that if they narrow the rotation down, it would be TLC that's axed from the rotation. So like Delon Wright seems like maybe he's second in line to get a minute's haircut. He's only 3,200, so it's not like he has to play like a lot of minutes. We have him for so we have him for 18 minutes, and he's showing up as 14 fantasy points for 3,200 and in playoffs. Like not bad. So how confident are you on Delon Wright? Like, would you play him in the same lineup as Trae Young, or is that a combo you're not as enthusiastic about?
I think you can play them together just because he's 3,200. He doesn't project great. I mean, the thing you have to keep in mind is that, I expect him to be on the floor whenever Young is not, but I also expect Young to be on the bench for a total of like 8 minutes tonight. So if you say Wright's going to play 20 to 22 minutes, then most of those minutes are still coming alongside Trae Young. And in the games that he's played with Young and without Collins, he has an 8.7% usage rate. So it is a situation where you're talking about somebody that's getting some ownership because he is so cheap, but it's really difficult to expect him to really do a whole lot. And then the other, I mean, the nightmare scenario if you're playing Delon Wright is that that his minutes are cut. Like if like I had said, I have a hard time because we haven't really seen it from Atlanta. Have a hard time like giving 36 plus minutes to guys like Bogdanovich, Gallo, Herter, Hunter. If that happens though, those minutes are coming straight from Delon Wright.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on to the next game because it feels like we covered everyone here. So let's before we do that, let's talk about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a fantasy platform where you can bet on props. I know super popular, like, and in certain states, it's really the only way you can get action on these props, but it's also a pretty cool platform. The way it works is you pick between 2 and 5 different players to pick props for, and then you get different payouts based on how aggressive you are with your predictions. And you can go like winner takes all, or if you get 2 out of 3, you get a certain payout. You can get $100 bonus using the promo code Awesemo on PrizePicks. Plus, you can get a 1-month free membership to Awesemo Plus Platinum. So really a lot of incentive to sign up and try PrizePicks, and I'm pretty confident you're going to like it. So let's talk about some PrizePicks plays today. One of the guys that I'm pretty high on in props is Devin Vassell. It's actually funny because on PrizePicks, they have his props a lot higher than I was expecting, given what the props are at the sports books. So that's kind of leading me a different direction. I'm kind of looking at Keldon Johnson. He's a guy that he's probably one of the top players on the Spurs, aside from DeJounte Murray, but someone that is competent offensive and defense. So I think he's going to be on the court more than normal, and he's played like really huge minutes in the regular season through stretches. So I'm pretty confident taking overs compared to his season average rates. The line on PrizePicks is 6. What are you looking at on PrizePicks?
Yeah, a couple from Atlanta. 30.5 points for Trae Young. I like the over there. I'm expecting a huge game from Young. And then you had mentioned it earlier, but over 13 rebounds for Clint Capella. Good spot for him, should dominate the glass. And then also just the likelihood that he plays a few extra minutes because it is a postseason game.
Nice. So guys, hopefully that gets your PrizePicks card going here. And again, you can get $100 free deposit bonus using the promo code Awesemo. And you can also you can get that free month of Awesemo Plus by signing up. So check them out. All right, let's look at the next game here, which is San Antonio. San Antonio has been kind of interesting throughout the season. The only injury today is Doug McDermott remains out. And I was a little bit shocked because in the last game, it felt like they didn't really have much to play for. So, and there was actually a report that it was like Pirtle's going to play like limited minutes along with Murray and other guys. I'm like, yes, my prop today is like the Pirtle under on rebounds. And then he like played the full minutes. I'm like, dang, that's a rug right there. I don't know if you got into those NFT terms, but what the heck happened in that game? Because they were locked into their seed, right? And then also, like, what do you think? Do you see any high level changes in the rotation tonight?
Yeah, so I mean that was weird in that game. The one big takeaway for me was that you got 32 minutes in a meaningless game from DeJounte Murray after he had been sick and said he had lost like 6 to 8 pounds or something. So that was really good to see, and it alleviates a lot of my concerns that I would have had about him tonight. So that was really good to see. But other than that, I'm not expecting too much to change in the way of the rotation. I do think that there's a good chance you see Keita Bates-Diop just not a part of the rotation. Lonnie Walker was out in that last game. I think that you'll have Walker basically playing Diop's minutes plus a little bit more. But I think that San Antonio is another team where there's a few guys that I'm really confident in their minutes, and then there's like a group of guys that I have a decent idea of what I expect, but I wouldn't be shocked if it kind of goes differently. So like I'm expecting, Murray obviously to play a ton. I had mentioned it before. I think it's clearly him and Trae Young neck and neck as the top 2 projected players on the slate. At the center position, you should be getting 48 minutes from Pirtle and Zach Collins. I'm assuming you're getting 30 to 32 from Pirtle, potentially more if he's able to avoid foul trouble. I think he's very similar to the Clint Capella situation where I don't feel comfortable projecting him any higher than that, but if he plays 36, it wouldn't be shocking. Collins should play every minute that he's not out there. Collins is kind of your like Naz Reid play from last night, where at 45 or at 4,400, I think he's a little bit overpriced for his normal role. But if Pirtle were to, foul out or something, Collins is a very good point per minute guy. So that's the kind of guy where, 2-game slate, you at least have a path to success. I think Keldon Johnson plays a ton at 7K. I think he's fine. I would rather get to Miles Bridges, but I think everybody would rather get to Miles Bridges. So I don't mind Keldon Johnson as, a pivot in tournaments. Beyond that, I kind of wonder what the rotation is going to look like. I think Devin Vassell leads the way in terms of minutes for the rest of those guys. I think expecting around 36 minutes from Vassell makes sense. 6K looks decent for him. But where I'm kind of curious what they do is they've been starting Josh Primo. He's only $3,400. He's not a great point per minute guy. If you want to use, assuming he starts, if you want to use him for value, that's fine. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if you see more minutes for Josh Richardson, just because of it being a playoff game. Richardson, having a lot of experience, Primo being a young guy. Or Lonnie Walker potentially, depending on how this game goes. Like if San Antonio is playing from behind and you need somebody to come out there and potentially, spark the offense and score a lot of points in a hurry, Lonnie Walker is really the guy out of that group. So at 4,200, I don't really hate the idea of Walker in tournaments either. So I think that all of Walker, Richardson, and Primo sort of offer different things. Like Primo is the cheapest of the group. If he plays 24 minutes, you're probably not going to be thrilled with what you get, but it does open the door for some pay up options. I think Richardson could maybe surprise people and play several minutes more than they expect, and then Walker could just be the guy where he gets hot and he just picks up more minutes.
Yeah, definitely. This one is interesting. I mean, looking at their last game, you could kind of interpret their last game of the season as a preview of their playoff rotation almost, because you did have Devin Vassell play 31 minutes in the first 3 quarters. Keldon Johnson played 30 minutes in the first 3 quarters, and DeJounte Murray played 31.5 minutes in the first 3 quarters. So that's only Keldon Johnson played in the fourth quarter. So you saw really big minutes for those three. And then Pirtle also got a minutes bump to 28.5 over 3 quarters. So if he avoids foul trouble like you're suggesting, and they follow the same rotation, he could be up to 35 minutes. So that is a really high upside play. I'm kind of feeling it like Zach Collins, like he has been somewhat effective this year in this backup role. So it could be that Zach Collins plays his way into more minutes too. But I also like, I don't know if you like feel this way, but like I feel like people throughout the season, aside from DeJounte Murray, like none of these guys are like fantasy blue chips. Like none of them get like high points per minute. Like maybe Jakob Pertl, but like Vassell and Keldon Johnson, like I feel like these are guys that usually don't excite fantasy NBA players. So I feel like they're always a little bit sneaky. Vassell, especially, it seems like people aren't giving him credit for a minutes bump tonight. Like at least based on the ownership projections, kind of being in that 20% range. I'm looking at it and I'm like his minutes could go up from like being 34 a game to like near 40 if it's a competitive game. So Vassell and Johnson are definitely standing out to me as ways to kind of get away from the crowd today. What do you think?
Yeah, like I think you're a little bit higher on Vassell than I am. Like I don't disagree with you that he could play a lot. I'm just not quite as bullish on his minutes. But even expecting around like 35 or 36, he still ends up being kind of useful with the shooting guard, small forward eligibility, and only being 6K. So the fact that we have him projected for 15% ownership, still I think looks pretty low, even though I'm not quite as high as you are. And then Keldon Johnson, like I'm with you. It's Johnson looks good at 7K. He'd be really popular, I think, except for he's $100 less than Miles Bridges and projects several points lower. So you're just going to get to Miles Bridges a lot more. Everybody's going to get to Miles Bridges a lot more. But in a one-game sample, like you're still talking about somebody that could conceivably play 38, 40 minutes, averages 0.9 fantasy points per minute. Bridges is like 1 fantasy point per minute. So it's not like you're talking about two drastically different players. Keldon Johnson's still going to beat Miles Bridges a decent percent of the time, and you have Bridges at 46% ownership compared to 30 for Keldon Johnson. So from a median standpoint, I'm on the same page as you. You have Miles Bridges 4 points higher than Keldon Johnson. That makes a ton of sense to me. But in terms of range of outcomes, I don't think it's that big of a difference.
Definitely. So maybe some Spurs guys. Interesting. I saw some question about Trae Jones in the chat from Nico. That's the guy that I'm a little bit worried he could get phased out of the rotation with Lonnie Walker back. It seems like they really like Josh Richardson as well. So, and also Josh Primo. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with this backup point guard minutes. Do you have any confidence in Trae Jones tonight?
I'm just assuming he backs up DeJounte Murray. I have a hard time thinking that he plays enough minutes. Well, I have a hard time thinking he plays many minutes alongside him anyway. But the other issue is he's 5,300 on DraftKings because his price hasn't gone back down from him starting when Murray was out. So it's a case where like even if I'm wrong and Trae Jones does play 18 minutes or something, I wouldn't play him at 5,300 anyway.
Yeah, good call. All right, guys. Last game, New Orleans Pelicans. So on the Pelicans, Brandon Ingram had been out the last 3 games. He's back tonight. In addition, Herb Jones looks like he missed the last game, as well as Devontae Graham. The last game, it was just there was nothing to play for in that last game of the season, right, for the Pelicans?
Yeah.
Okay.
The last one, there's nothing to play for. I don't remember if there was 2 games before.
Yeah. 2 games before they needed, like there were 2 games ahead of the Spurs. So they needed one Spurs loss or a win to lock in the higher seed compared to them. Not that 9 versus 10 matters a ton, I think. So anyway, I think we know who the guys that the Pelicans really favor. It's CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram, obviously. And then Herb Jones is a guy that's always played a lot of minutes just for his defensive abilities. So those are the 3 guys. I feel really confident in the minutes. What do you think?
Yeah, those are the guys that I feel most confident in the minutes, particularly McCollum and Ingram. Like, there's no reason that these guys wouldn't be playing a lot. I think it's fair to maybe give Ingram, a minute or two less than McCollum just because, health reasons. And McCollum has been playing a million minutes a game like every year for Portland too. Like it's just what he does. But I'm still, fully expecting 38 to 40 minutes from both of those guys. You get a little bit of a discount on Ingram in the games that he's played with Valanciunas and McCollum. Still has a 29.5% usage rate, a 27.5% assist percentage. McCollum in those games, 27.5% usage, 24.5% assist percentage. They both look fantastic to me. Herbert Jones, you can't be as confident in the production, just because he's not a high usage guy, but he should be out there a lot defensively. And, at 4,500, just being on the floor for, let's say, 36 minutes is pretty valuable. So I feel confident in those minutes as well.
Agreed. I think Herb Jones is going to be super popular. Well, he's like a really solid play at 4,500, and the ownership is 37%. So looks like he's top 10 on the slate. Not egregious, but we have him at 43% chance of cracking the optimal lineup. So certainly a guy that is a good play tonight. The rest of the Pelicans, okay, so Joe Val, he got in like the worst foul trouble ever 2 games ago. Like it's like because it was a really short slate. I think I had him like 70% or something. And then he got 4 fouls in like 5 minutes or something. And then he played a total of six minutes. So I'm kind of wondering if people are going to be off him just because they have a sour taste in their mouth from that game. And he hasn't played big minutes in a while, but I don't think it's because they don't like favor him over the other options. So I'm kind of wondering if Joe Val might be a sneakier play than normal tonight. What do you think?
I think he is, just because it's difficult to get there. I kind of talked about it before, but like we talked about it with Capella, where there's several pay down options at center that people are going to want to use. But then if you're not using them, you still have pretty good values in Jakob Poeltl and Clint Capella that are still a couple $1,000s less expensive than Joe Val. He doesn't project as well as, his teammates that are similarly priced. He doesn't project as well as Ingram. He doesn't project as well as CJ McCollum. But keep in mind, like early in the season, you were frequently getting 37, 38-minute games from Joe Val. So there's no reason conditioning wise that you would think that he can't go out there and play a lot. There's, in the postseason, I'm not expecting Hernan Gomez to be in the rotation. Jackson Hayes is kind of whatever. You have Larry Nance now that I assume is going to be out there whenever Joe Val's not. But he's just someone that, I think he's going to be difficult to get to. But I do just really like the idea of trying to get him into lineups, just because there's not many guys that are capable of going for 50 plus fantasy points that are also not going to be really popular.
Yeah, agreed. I think that like he's kind of in that same bucket as Pirtle as well, like where he might get more minutes than people are expecting because it is the playoffs. So counterbalanced a little bit by possible foul trouble because like it's easy to remember that because he fouled out of the game 2 games ago. So I think that Valanciunas is interesting. What about the last starter, Jackson Hayes? A guy that he hasn't been as productive at power forward as he had been at center, but he's one of the guys on the team you can count to get a decent run of minutes.
Yeah, I think he's kind of interesting in the sense where like I think he's kind of like a poor man's PJ Washington. I don't feel quite as confident in his minutes as I do in Washington's, and I didn't feel that confident in Washington's. But you also like you see, the rates go down. He's playing alongside 3 high usage guys. He's also playing alongside a huge rebounder in Valanciunas. So it's risky. And then it also kind of depends on what the rotation looks like, because we've seen at times recently where Hayes becomes the backup center. They stagger his minutes with Valanciunas. At other times, they haven't really done that. They've gone to Larry Nance, and Hayes has played most of his minutes alongside Joe Val. So there's a lot of different things that, could go wrong for Hayes or could go right for Hayes. But I do think that assuming he's not going to pull quite as much ownership as those guys. Like, for example, Hayes right now is projected for 8% ownership. He's $500 more than Herbert Jones, who's projected for 37. I think Jones is clearly the better play in terms of, projection and floor and how confident I am. But if you gave me 5-1 odds and I get to take Jackson Hayes, I'm taking that every time.
Nice. We got a super chat from Goody. Thanks for the super chat. He said he always tries to stay within 10 points of the optimal lineup. A very solid strategy in NBA DFS. Says, does the strategy apply on a 2-game slate? was the furthest you'd stray away from the optimal lineup in points in DK and GPP. So I think that this question really depends on how many good value plays that there are or how many plays are like really stand out from the rest. So like the closer every player is in value, then actually maybe I'm going down a weird path here because okay, so if there's fewer ways to make a really high projected lineup, you want to deviate more from that. But on today's slate, I feel like you can make a lot of awesome lineups within 10 points of the optimal. And like that's a pretty decent range where like if you're not like within a few points of the optimal, you're not likely to be super duped. So I feel like that 10-point range is a reasonable range tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your answer. Like, it's kind of hard for me to answer that because I don't really pay attention to it. So, like, I think that typically my lineups do end up relatively close to the optimal, but it's not like I go in paying attention to how close I am. So I can't really give a good answer as far as like how far I would stray away because I just have absolutely no idea. But I agree with everything that you said.
One of the things I found is that okay, on the lineup builder, you can see your value score and your contrarian score. And like in some sports, you want to be like kind of balanced between projection and ownership based on our simulations. Like I think that in NBA, you want to be like above 80 or 90% in the percentile of projection. And then in ownership, like if you can get that mark while being like 30% in ownership, that would be an exceptionally good lineup. So I think projection is a lot more valuable in NBA in general. In playoff slates where like a lot of the plays blur together, you can be a little bit more balanced, but I would definitely err towards a higher projection in NBA DFS to be safe. We got a couple of minutes before we turn it over here. Any final thoughts on tonight's slate?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention it because I don't think we had, and I'd seen his name come up a couple times in chat. Larry Nance at 3,600, I think is interesting to me because he's cheap enough where like he's averaged about 20 minutes per game since he joined the Pels. He's cheap enough where he projects decent, in 20 to 21 minutes. But he is the kind of guy that like he's I think kind of the Pels version of Josh Richardson, where like you could just see him play more minutes in a postseason game because he does a lot of things well and he's experienced. So like it wouldn't be shocking if you just see Larry Nance pick up an extra few minutes, at the expense of like Jackson Hayes or something. So I do like him in tournaments quite a bit, actually.
Awesome. Yeah, I think Larry Nance is pretty interesting, like a very good player compared to the role on the team that he's had. And I know he switched teams. So I think him and Richardson are definitely guys where, like, especially if maybe a guy gets cut out of the rotation that we're not expecting, like that could really benefit some of these other bench guys. So some stuff to keep an eye out for tonight. Guys, if you haven't already checked out our sponsor PrizePicks, make sure to claim that offer, the $100 match bonus and the free month of Awesemo Plus. And I think you'll really like their platform as well with the props. And we got a full hour taking you all the way up to lock with Eric and Greg. So guys, good luck tonight and stay tuned.
Ooh, the beat go. Yeah.
Am I supposed to start now? You just went from 5 to 1. Is that okay?
That'd be pretty funny.
You caught that too, right, Eric?
I did. I'm looking at Jordan Klein's smiling face. He just went.
All right, what is going on, guys? A little bit of a hiccup on the start there. Jordan with the most confusing countdown ever, but we love and appreciate him anyway. NBA Live Before Lock, sponsored by PrizePicks. Here's Jordan goes, I'm going to count you down to 5, and then we start. And he just puts up 5 fingers, and then he just goes 1 and puts his finger down. I'm like, does that mean I'm supposed to start? What happened? It was very confusing, but we started anyway. I'm joined here by Eric. Eric was very invested in the last show we watched. You seem to enjoy that quite a bit based on your text messages, Eric.
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel bad because everybody just had Alex Baker and Adam Scherer, 2 of the top 25 players on planet Earth, Alex Baker being the number 1 player on planet Earth. And now it's Greg and Eric. Hi, everybody. They were going deep into game theory, telling you about ownership difference in terms of how to build great lineups. And now I'm just going to just BS. You were saying, oh, fart jokes time, right? Fart jokes or...
No. So, I mean, for me, you're like, oh my God, are you watching the show? It's the greatest thing I've ever seen in the history of my life. Or are you watching? I'm like, no. I'm about to do Live Before Lock. I'm looking for my nose that honks. I'm looking for the big shoes. I'm putting my makeup on. I've got a show to do. This is my version of the show. We got dick jokes to tell. We're not here. Yeah, exactly. We're not here to get the quite ins and outs of the deepness that Adam and Alex Baker could provide, but we do our best. And we've also going to be going over PrizePicks a little bit. And if you guys are signing up at PrizePicks for the first time, use the promo code Awesemo, get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit and 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So we'll be talking about PrizePicks also after the main slate locks. Although yesterday, just immediately the game tipped off early, which never happens in NBA. So we'll see if that happens again. But other than that, Eric, how do you feel about today's 2-game slate? And are there any lessons you took from yesterday's 2-game slate that could apply to today?
Yeah, remember the guy that said Rondo? Sorry to him. You win. You could tell the future, and playoff Rondo confirmed a thing. Just coming back out there, they needed to switch up the rotation. Nothing was really working for them. They were down massive early, and sure enough, Rajon Rondo showed up. I did not expect that. Still had a profitable night last night without him, so I'm okay going back to the well on some of these plays where, Jordan McLaughlin did not work out in terms of like a guy, but I didn't have more than 10% of him or anything. It was just a way to try to get different. I think there's better value plays all around on this slate than what we had yesterday. Do you get that same impression?
It depends what, in terms of like really cheap guys. No, yes. Not really. There's nobody I'm looking at who's, I don't know, so we had the issue yesterday where there was nobody sub 4K that we really like to roster. I still don't find that many guys sub 4K that I'm like, oh, that's a dude I need to have in my lineups.
But yeah, in the 4K range specifically, I feel a lot better about some of these plays. Nick Claxton was about the only guy I felt good about yesterday. It was in that 4K range, period, end of story. So I think there's a number of shots. I think the boom bust tool too is just going to be relied so heavily on these slates where now we know what the rotations are going in. I mean, we'll have to sweat some Luka Doncic news, I'm sure, eventually over the course of these playoffs. We'll have some injury news that might matter here and there going forward as well, just on the timing of it. If you have a slate that lasts 4 games throughout an entire Saturday or Sunday, like we might have coming up. But for the most part, these 2-game slates, I'm looking at the boom bust tool. I am finding leverage any way that I humanly possibly can. And I'm just basically looking at roster construction and trying to flip it in certain ways because there's a very easy path. And we saw that last night where a lot of people were playing the straightforward Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Karl Anthony Towns just did not work out in any way, shape, or form. But if you got yourself on D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, paths like that, where you just kind of got off of Cat from his own team, you were collecting a lot of money. And, Rajon Rondo wasn't even in the winning lineup. He was a phenomenal play and a guy that if we had any of, you probably had a decent night. But I think on a slate like this in the 4K range, I'm looking at the boom bust tool where we have guys like Herbert Jones specifically, Lonnie Walker, Mason Plumlee. I just don't think is going to get clicked at all. I think there's going to be paths even on a 2-game slate to get pretty different and mix up roster construction.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you're overselling Rondo a little. He scored 21 fantasy points?
24, I think on DK under 4K. And he was like 6% owned. So I don't know. I don't think it was a mistake. I didn't really see him playing much, but they got down so early that they just tried to make some stuff work, and he came out and was serviceable. So they made a little bit of a run. They needed to create. They weren't getting any spacing, but they don't really have shooters to come in off the bench. So they just basically said, let's get 2 playmakers out there, try to create, and Markkanen was effective. They made a little bit of a run there in that third quarter. Overall entertaining game, but the better team definitely won.
Yeah, and here's one thing that I do think is a little bit different about today's slate as compared to yesterday. And it's actually something right here that KOQ Cake said in our YouTube chat, win or go home. There is no safety net for the teams today. You know, last night we saw these teams, if they lost, it obviously wasn't ideal, but there was still like, hey, we could win another game and make it into the playoffs. Today, absolutely must win, no excuses. These teams, they win, they get another shot, another game with a chance to make playoffs. They lose, they're going right back and going home. We saw really concentrated minutes yesterday. I think we see even more concentrated minutes for today's slate, where, I mean, we could really legitimately see guys like Trae Young, DeJounte Murray potentially play close to entire games. So that is something that does weigh on my mind when I'm thinking of minutes for these guys. Is that also something that you consider at all?
Yeah, big time. It makes me nervous because I think we have to take shots on guys like Larry Nance and Zach Collins. We'll get to them at the forward spot, but there's no guarantees about anything. You're really going to have to find a couple of those guys, just that one piece of differentiation in your lineups that can really take you to the top. There's guys like Guillermo Hernan-Gomez, who, if he goes off, I'm not going to win today because I have 0 of him. There's guys that exist on this slate, just like there were yesterday, where it's like Rajon Rondo, I just had 0 of, and he ended up being somebody that could definitely take you to the top of tournaments, even if he wasn't in the winning lineup in the 100K on DK. But a guy like Trey Murphy the third, this is the kind of thing where we're talking about, like, he's 3%, 4% yesterday. I'd be willing to roll the dice on a guy like that. I just don't think it's necessary today because of that concentrated type ownership. So really kind of understanding what those rotations look like now, as opposed to what we've seen the last week and a half, that might throw some people off the scent and try to have them make bad decisions. I think we got to be very specific in terms of like how we're allocating it. That's why I'm looking at the boom bust tool, and I'm just taking drastic overweight stance on some guys that, yeah, it feels uncomfortable, but you know, when you're getting 19% leverage on a guy like Devin Vassell, if you're going to get Herbert Jones sitting there and just such an easy plug and play piece on FanDuel and DraftKings, I think you just have to find those kind of guys, be massively overweight, and live with the result.
So let's start by talking about the point guards. And there's a very clear tier in terms of pay up options at the guard position, or at least at point guard. And I'm going to include CJ McCollum differently. We'll talk about him after. But we have DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, LaMelo Ball, all point guard eligible on both FanDuel and DraftKings. And these guys are just, you know, a lot more expensive than the majority of the other plays at the guard spot. So when you're looking at these 3 pay up options, who is it that you're prioritizing?
It is so different site to site. For me, it's going to be Trae Young, kind of above everything. He's just the guy in the boom bust tool as well. The optimal rate, 62.3% over on FanDuel, 10-1. You talk about these minutes, it's win or go home. This is an Atlanta Hawks team that was in the conference finals last year. They're a team that I think come postseason time, they just had Trae Young playing way above his head in spots. Now, no John Collins, that makes things pretty unique, but I think that just is better suited for Trae Young to go out, play 42, 44 minutes in this spot and try to go out and just win this game flat out by himself. I feel like he's the guy out of the 3 that I'm the most confident getting to. And that goes for DraftKings and FanDuel. The next tier, though, I mean, LaMelo Ball has been a very frustrating roster, but at the identical rostership of DeJounte Murray on DraftKings right now, I have to be going to Ball at 9,700. I'm just going to kind of play that spot a little bit more. San Antonio, I feel like this is something where the Pelicans, they have enough defensive players on that entire team now, where DeJounte Murray, they're not going to completely limit his ability. He's a guy who rebounds, assists, scores, does everything you want across the board. But LaMelo Ball, just for $1,100 cheaper, having some lineups where I'm leaving a little bit of salary on the table, I feel a lot more comfortable landing on him than DeJounte Murray on DraftKings.
So there's something interesting to me about LaMelo Ball. And you mentioned how frustrating he's been. And the number one reason he's been frustrating has been because of the playing time. There's been games where just like, why is he playing 28 minutes in a competitive game? Doesn't make any sense. Sometimes it's foul trouble. Sometimes it's just no real reason. I remember a couple games early in the year where LaMelo Ball told the coach, like, hey, just leave Ish Smith in. He's playing well. I'll sit on the bench. That is not going to happen today because Ish Smith isn't on the team. The only reason why. But it's the actual real point here is that LaMelo Ball, I think, stands to gain the most from this atmosphere as compared to the other guards, because DeJounte Murray already plays a ton. Trae Young already plays a ton. These minutes for LaMelo Ball are secure today for probably the first time the entire season. So I think that LaMelo Ball, relative to his price, is the best of these pay-up guard options, just because I don't necessarily think his minutes are being projected properly across the industry. He legitimately, I think, probably is more likely to play 40 plus than he is to play under that number. And that's just not how he's getting projected. And I think we just throw out what we've seen in the regular season from him. So I really like LaMelo. I like the discounts he gets us. And you mentioned that there are some cheaper plays to like, but it's not like min price guys.
Right.
It's not like there's guys who are 32, 3,500 we get. And that's where I think the salary savings we're getting from LaMelo could really come in huge. I love getting to him. Do you think we do see 40 plus minutes from LaMelo today? Something we haven't really seen this year.
I have him projected for 39 right now, and I'm okay just having it be a minute under 40. Part of it, too, is Ish Smith isn't there backing him up. I mean, it's been Cody Martin, who's a guy that's been in this rotation playing mid-20s minutes. But, Rozier can definitely play on the ball. It's not an issue in that regard. But LaMelo Ball, same thing as you, where I just think that they want to have him out there for more extended run here for this game. It would very much surprise me to see them lose this game and have him only play 35 minutes. Like, that would just be a flat-out mistake, I think. I think that's just that would be problematic. So I'm with you. I think that there's a little bit of increased opportunity there for him. For DeJounte Murray, I mean, it's not like he had been playing crazy minutes towards the end of the season either. He had one game where he played 40. Otherwise, it's been like mid 30s minutes for him as well coming down the stretch over the last month. So there's a lot to gain there, but he's 10-6, and that's just a little bit different. I will say his shooting guard utility on FanDuel mixes it up a little bit for me, where I'm getting to more of him on the FanDuel site, DeJounte Murray, that is, than I am over on DraftKings, where it's pretty clear cut. You're playing, for me, a lot more Trae Young over DeJounte Murray, and then LaMelo Ball's kind of just a savings piece that allows me to access the entire board. And somebody that if you're going to give me them at identical ownership, him and DeJounte Murray, I will just play the LaMelo Ball shot and just continue to try to find an upgraded position here and there.
All right, so we've got some questions to catch up on, and then we could circle back on some of the other guards. First, our guy Michael McKinney, the usual FanDuel question we get from him: who are our 2 favorite payups on FanDuel and 3 favorite mid-value cash plays? All right, so 2 payup options, 2 value options when it comes to cash games over on FanDuel. So I'm going to say payup options. I think it kind of has to be, for me, LaMelo Ball and Trae Young. I guess we could also include CJ McCollum in that mix. I know we only asked for 2, but I'm going to give you 3, little bonus. So CJ McCollum, LaMelo Ball, Trae Young. I think all 3 of those should be in a cash game lineup. Any disagreements from you?
Nope. That's absolutely it. And I think for cash game purposes as well, there's no way on God's green earth you're not playing a sub 7K Miles Bridges.
Yes. And he asked for value / mid-range plays. Okay. I know sometimes people ask for a value play and Eric's like, hey, LeBron James, how about Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo? But he did ask for value / mid-range plays. So Miles Bridges does make the mix. Good call by you, because I know that's what you were about to say there. Miles Bridges. Greg. Yep. Miles Bridges totally makes sense and also fits the criteria. As for other guys, Herbert Jones and DeAndre Hunter would be the other ones. And by the way, don't want to reveal too much. Those are all guys that are in my personal highest projected lineup. So anything you differ with there?
Nope, not a single thing. I will say, I mean, you're playing cash games. I said this yesterday. Godspeed to you. All the grace and love in the world.
Yeah. If you're playing cash games on a 2-game slate or sweating out 15-game NBA slates at the last day of the season, you have a very strong will. Super chat from Jeff Williams: Ingram and Harrell or Capella and Vassell for a DK high dollar GPP? Ingram and Harrell or Capella and Vassell?
I like 2 parts of that because Ingram and Vassell are going to be 2 massive stands I have, and that just comes directly from the boom bust tool. And also thinking about this out loud, Brandon Ingram, if you're what dinged up, you're just saving him for this game. You're going to unleash Brandon Ingram to play every single possible minute he can. Now, I would say out of any stud, anybody above 8K, he's the one that I have concerns wouldn't hit the 40 minute mark the most, but we haven't projected for 37 minutes here at Awesemo. And I think, if he's good to go, he's at least been playing mid 30s minutes here down the stretch as well. 35, 35, 34 in his last 3 appearances. I think that bodes well for a 38-minute type allotment here. So I like Brandon Ingram a lot. If you're going to make me pick one side of it, I'm probably going to go to his side of it because I like him a little bit more than I like Devin Vassell, even if we're getting all the leverage and all the land on him there. I like Brandon Ingram as a major tournament piece for this slate.
Yeah, and Montrezl Harrell too. When we were talking about sub 4K guys, Harrell's one of the only guys on this slate that I like getting to. And I don't know what his minutes are going to look like, but I know what his upside looks like. And he's cheap. Yeah. Montrezl Harrell could score a lot of fantasy points in her. We've seen that numerous times from over the last few years.
I think that's a great point for this 2-game slate as well, is that it doesn't do you any good to just project the minutes. What are they going to do in those minutes, right? Like when you get it right with Montrezl Harrell, you're winning tournaments as opposed to, just, oh, cool, I projected him for 24 minutes and he played 24 minutes. Like that doesn't do you a lot of good if it's Trae Murphy.
Yeah, exactly. And, while we saw, because people might listen to what you just said and said, well, Trae Murphy had big games on slates that you liked Trae Murphy.
I did.
But also it was a totally different scenario. It was where there was a bunch of guys out for the Pelicans. Montrezl Harrell, we could see 20 minutes from him, 28 from Mason Plumlee. We could see Plumlee get into foul trouble. As far as cheap players go, Montrezl Harrell, I think, has the most upside on this slate. So that's something that's going to lead me towards the Harrell side more. We have our question here from Rosso Music. Thanks, fellas. Or Tears, fellas. I misread that as thanks. But so a Tears question: Bogdan Bogdanovic, Jakob Poeltl, Clint Capella, or Terry Rozier? That is Terry Rozier for me.
Yeah, I think Terry Rozier is my projected just raw out of all of them. So we're looking at DK. Terry Rozier I have for 40 fantasy points. That seems like that's going to be the best by a ways.
So we got a follow-up from Jeff Williams. He gave us all the wrong names before. So we've got different names. Sorry, wrong combinations before. No need to apologize. We appreciate the super chat. You didn't have to leave us another super chat. You could have just thrown the question in the YouTube chat and I would have answered that. But sorry, wrong combo before. Vassell and Capella or Ingram and Richardson for a high dollar GPP. Well, this is different because Josh Richardson is somebody who I do not like nearly as much as I like Montrezl Harrell before. So that is the Vassell and Capella combination for me.
Yeah, it's definitely high dollar GPP. I'm not going to tell you to play Josh Richardson today for a $500 entry like that. It's going to happen. Somebody's going to do it. Just, I strongly prefer to recommend Vassell and Capella.
Yeah. Same page with me. Super chat from my filler arc. I'm just glad playoff P or playoff Rondo are not on this slate. Give the scrubs in the NBA like Young or Murray a chance to win the slate. Would you rather have Young and McCollum or Bridges and Murray?
I would rather have Young and McCollum. If we're talking FanDuel on DK, I still would take the Young and McCollum. I think Bridges and Murray are fantastic. But again, Murray's the one guy I'm a little bit lighter on this slate. And I say I'm getting to more of him on FanDuel. DraftKings, it's just going to be a bite down and hope he does not completely destroy my life, which is totally possible. I mean, a 25, 10, and 10 triple-double is in the cards. But even still, there's paths where I think you can find ways, as long as ball plays well, where you're upgrading another position somewhere. And I think that in the long run for me is just going to be something I'm more comfortable on this slate doing.
All right. We got a super chat from Mike Campbell, who is just noticed I did well in MLB. Thank you, Mike. You have to pay me money for making money. You don't have to pay. I appreciate it, but you don't have to send me money because I just made money. But I like Mike a lot. Mike and I DM a lot on Twitter. Super chat from Finn Gormiaz Jr. I thought that was going to be some kind of, I thought that was going to be one of those names, but just one that's kind of hard to read. So from our guy, Finn, who sent us Canadian bucks, but he's only asking you. He's not asking me. He says, Eric, Collins or Okongwu?
Well, Zach Collins or Okongwu?
I assume it's not John Collins is not playing.
Here's the thing. Okongwu is a guy that I'm overweight to today. And here's why. There's a path where if Capella gets in foul trouble or something happens where he's just going to smash the slate at 1.05 fantasy points per minute. I don't know if there's just a direct Zach Collins smashing absent Jakob Poeltl. I think there's just a better path at their current prices. I mean, if we're talking DraftKings, where, you know, they're both going to be, it's a little bit of a different position question. So Zach Collins is 4,700. I'm looking at over on FanDuel. I really don't have a lot of interest in getting there whatsoever. Whereas, you know, you have to play a Kungwu there. He is center only. That's not fun because you're looking at an opportunity cost type thing there. Yeah, he's $500 cheaper, but they're completely different positions. I just am going to write off Zach Collins. I'll say a Kungwu in either situation, actually.
Is that true, Jordan? Did Mike win? Oh, he came in first place. I didn't even realize that. But Mike, good shit. I didn't realize you came in first place. So there we go. That's why he's giving me money, because he's one of the 4 people who beat me out in contest.
Soft flex.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Good win, Mike. I'll have to DM him after the show ends. Guys, do us a favor, also like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm going to our premium Discord chat right now and see what questions we're getting here. First from Iron Maiden 2. He's asking us thoughts on Oubre and Devontae Graham as salary savers. Off the top of my head, I do not believe these are guys that I got much of at all, but let me double check to make sure that is the case. I
don't think you can play Devontae Graham today.
So Devontae Graham, I don't think I have him projected to play 14 minutes. He's not somebody that is really making it into my lineups. And then, I mean, Kelly Oubre is kind of in the same situation. Oubre has not played much at all down the stretch of the season. I know that Gordon Hayward's been ruled out, but so what? Gordon Hayward's been out for an extended period of time. It hasn't really mattered that much for Oubre. Oubre at least does have some upside. If I had to pick between the two of them, I prefer Oubre to Graham, but still not a priority play for me. Do you feel any different? But sorry, one more point. I was going to kick it to you. Oubre is also picking up some ownership. It's not like we're getting him at 1 or 2% owned. He's somewhat popular with ownership in the teens. He's not appealing to me. Somebody I'm underweight to in my build right now, but Oubre and Graham, what do you make of them?
Yeah, but if you're going to make me pick one, I have to pick Oubre. It's the same thing as Harrell, where when you get him right, you're going to get paid for it. Devontae Graham is like a salary saver, 3,800, where you're hoping that everything else in your lineup goes nuts, you know, on FanDuel or DraftKings. You're just hoping that everything else goes nuts and that he's kind of the missing piece that you just kind of play, gets to like 15, 16, and you win a tournament as a result. Hard for me to want to look at Devontae Graham with Brandon Ingram back, with Jose Alvarado playing, with all of these guys. It's just not an appealing spot. I mean, Jose Alvarado is going to play less minutes than Devontae Graham is, no doubt about it, but he's at least cutting in 6 to 8 minutes is kind of what I'm looking at. So Devontae Graham, I don't really find him viable whatsoever today.
And we've got another question, some of the same, or at least one of the same names coming up from Nadier 55. Richardson.
What was that?
I don't know. I just read it with an accent.
Okay.
It sounded French to me.
I thought, okay, I've just never heard you do an accent before.
No, but this Nadier, is that not Nadier? That sounds French, doesn't it?
It does, but can you do it one more time for me? Very slowly and sensually.
No, okay. I don't want you to be taking your clothes off in the middle of our basketball show. I know you were doing that while you're watching the last one. We're trying to be serious today, Eric.
I suppose. Go ahead.
Richardson or Walker or Oubre as the last man in a large field FanDuel tournament. Well, for starters, I don't like any of them that much on FanDuel. But if I had to pick one, I think Oubre is the most upside, but none of them are priority options.
Yeah, it would be Oubre for me. 11.9% optimal percentage, 8.9% ownership. He's the guy with the most leverage out of everybody you said. Just slightly over Lonnie Walker. He has a little bit higher lineup appearance right there. He's the identical number. I know what you're trying to do there. I get it. You kind of want to take these shots when you're making more than a couple lineups, but it's just, they're all three not good plays, but you got to try to take those kind of shots. I'm going to go with you. I'll say Oubre.
We've got another question here. Oh, this one, Jordan, somebody, they tagged you on this question instead of Eric. They want to hear from Eric. They want to hear from Jordan. Jordan shaking his head now. DK GPP, we know that center smash against the Hornets is Clint a go-to guy on a 2-game slate at Ehrenberg Greg at Jordan Klein. Yeah, I like Clint Capella quite a bit today. And, you know, I don't know that the minutes are going to look different between Clint Capella and Okongwu compared to what we saw where it was more of a timeshare down the stretch of the year. But I think it's possible that we just see Clint Capella play like 36 minutes to get the bulk of the action. So I like Clint Capella a lot for this spot. Jordan, I won't actually make you answer, but Eric, what do you make of Clint Capella?
I was kind of hoping you would. I do think, once again, I'm talking about Okongwu being a shot where you have the rule where I'm not going to play them in the same lineup. I just think there's a path where Okongwu, if Capella gets in foul trouble or something goes wrong, that could end up looking all right for you. But Clint Capella on this slate, one of the things over on OddsShopper too is we have him projected for 13 rebounds. And sometimes just to get a glimpse of like props and having an idea of what are decent enough bets, looks like you're getting plus money, it's dead even money on going to Clint Capella plus 100 there on the under of 13.5. It's one of those things where I'm going to have Capella in my portfolio today, but looking at that under 15% expected ROI, there's not a ton of amazing values on the board in betting circles because we kind of know these circumstances. We know kind of exactly what to expect from both teams in a situation that we haven't had here for a couple of weeks where, teams were playing for positioning and it's been wonky, some teams tanking. This is going to be pretty clear cut what we're getting with the minutes. That's going to make lines far more efficient, but still, I think that under has a little bit of weight to it. So check out OddsShopper for some of those unders.
Yeah, for sure. And then also you guys could check out our premium Discord channel that we now have, which it pays for itself. We track all the picks. It's been successful. So that's something you guys could take advantage of and sign up for. And then like Eric said, also OddsShopper, which is also a useful tool when combined with PrizePicks, who sponsors the show today. You could find some free props using our OddsShopper tools. Some more super chats to answer. First here from Darren Unger on FanDuel. Gallo and Rozier, Rozier / Herder, Bridges, Plumlee thoughts. All right, so he's asking Gallo and Rozier or Herder and Bridges, I think.
Kevin Herder is going to be another strong stand that I have on this slate. This is not the most comfortable play, but you talk about this rotation and what you're expecting. We've seen low 30s minutes pretty much constantly out of Kevin Herder coming down the stretch of the season. Atlanta was constantly playing for stuff, making sure they got their positioning. And I think that just makes me want to be investing in this spot with the boom bust tool showing he's the fifth most positive leverage player for the FanDuel slate right now. 4.2% leverage going his direction, 37% optimal percentage. I didn't expect him to grade out that well this morning, and kind of looking at the numbers throughout the day, he seems like a guy I'm landing on that 5,100, that 5K to 5,500 number quite a bit when I'm leaving a little bit of salary on the table. And I feel like I'm clicking his name a lot more. And then as I started crunching lineups, same thing started happening. So I think Bridges is unavoidable sub 7K on FanDuel. I think he's an absolute smash over there. So I got to be giving you Herder Bridges between the two of them, even though I love Rozier, a little less on Gallo.
And then the other part of his question was Plumlee thoughts. To me, I prefer getting to Montrezl Harrell. I have some exposure to Plumlee, but I think Harrell's the slightly stronger play. How about you, Plumlee? Where are you at with him?
It's so hard to want to use your one center spot on FanDuel to play him. On DraftKings, though, it's not like the most enticing thing ever, but I'm getting to a little bit over there where there's a 31.5% optimal appearance rate for him. Nearly a third of the time, Mason Plumlee is working out optimal on this slate. So I think on DraftKings, I'm a little bit more inclined to go there, get my exposure where I can play Capella, I can play Valanciunas, I can play some of these other centers along with him. FanDuel, it's really hard to land there.
Next super chat from our girl, Cheyenne DeWald. FanDuel, Rozier. Oh, no, it's that Richardson. Oh, no, they're both in it. I feel like I'm dyslexic today. The names are all coming up backwards to me. By the way, I have a cousin who's dyslexic who was briefly a professional boxer and then became an English teacher. Mm-hmm. So and now he cuts
Greg,
long.
You understand the things that I've read on this show? You're fine. You're fine.
But that's true. That's true as well. But I just wanted to throw out that I do have a dyslexic cousin who has an interesting background story.
Shout out to him. He's listening, not reading.
Yeah, no, he's doing neither. But that aside, Cheyenne DeWald, FanDuel question: Rozier, Pirtle, Richardson, Gallo. Okay, so a 4v4 or Ball, Vassell, Okongwu, Hunter. And then there's a second part of the question, but let's do this first. So Rozier, Pirtle, Richardson, Gallo, or Ball, Vassell, Okongwu, Hunter. I prefer Ball, Vassell, Okongwu, and Hunter.
As do I. I think, again, Okongwu, that's the shot that it's not going to work out forever, but there's a clear path to what happens when it does, and he breaks the slate. So I think I'm willing to take that shot. If for whatever reason Capella gets in foul trouble, you're looking at a guy over a fantasy point per minute rate. So once again, it's a 2-game slate. You got to take some stands, and this is one of them I'm taking.
All right. We have, the follow-up part of Cheyenne's question was, what is your go-to site for dependable MLB weather? I usually use Google. If I'm being honest, I just Google what the weather is. But that aside, we do have T. McBee, Terry McBride. His baseball articles this year, he does a weather roundup at the top of them. So that is something else that you could check out. And that's a good way to get some weather information. Super chat from Robert Amarosa. 20 max entry, higher exposure to Murray or Ball. That is Ball for me. And I believe you as well.
Yep, Ball. Super quick.
All right. And we are caught up on super chats. There was one more question we got in our premium Discord channel. I think it's a good way to get back to the guard position. Is somebody had asked us, he likes LaMelo Ball today. He likes Terry Rozier. Same with me. Are we willing to play them in the same lineups? In general, it would be suboptimal to me, but it's a 2-game slate. I can't be too concerned about it. But what are you going to be doing? Rozier, Ball, same lineups. Obviously, it's not ideal for generating the most upside possible, and there's negative correlation there. It kind of becomes unavoidable to me on a 2-game slate. Do you feel any differently?
Yeah, this is very quickly to kind of break this down. This is not an Okongwu Capella type thing where they're never going to share the floor together. One's detriment is generally going to be to one's benefit, and they're not both free in that kind of a regard. Like, it's hard for me to see paths where Capella is going to work out optimal if Okongwu smashes. So that's the way that I look at that. I see a lot of ways. This game environment in general, you're looking at 235 total compared to 224 for San Antonio, New Orleans. How does this work out optimally? You just have the game environment go nuts. It shoots out for 240. Very hard to imagine that Rozier and Ball wouldn't work out well alongside of each other there. Plus, the only shared statistic in basketball is the assist to a bucket. Everything else is individualized. But when you're projecting both of them for around 38 minutes, 40 minutes, it makes a lot of sense to just live with the result of having both of them in the same lineup, even if there is a slight little bit of negative correlation between them.
Yeah, and then as far as Rozier goes, getting back to the guard, he's one of my favorite guard plays on the slate. Once we're getting into the second tier of guys beyond, the stars that are on the slate, Rozier's my next favorite in that tier. Is it the same for you? And who else do you like at the guard spot that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, I just think this game is more enticing, Charlotte, Atlanta, and we don't have to worry about late swap. Now, that's not to say that I'm not going to be late swapping, because I surely am. I'm going to be reacting just like yesterday when I torched all of my amazing, basically that entire Brooklyn game. I had all the Bruce Brown. I had nearly 100% of him, and I had nearly 100% of Nick Claxton. And I somehow ruined it with the Minnesota game that went completely bonkers because of how much cat I had. So it was a little bit of a bummer. But it's going to kind of be the same thing tonight, where a little bit in the inverse, though, where I'm just playing a lot more of Charlotte, Atlanta, and I'm landing on specific pieces. Herbert Jones, Brandon Ingram, a little bit of DeJounte Murray, but I already said I'm going to be lower on him than the field. I just think this game environment is so drastically better, and Terry Rozier is going to be a guy that could be a major catalyst offensively. Plus, it's not like he's going overlooked or anything. He's the most expensive or the most popular guard play on the FanDuel slate aside from Trae Young. So, 57.9% rostership. Who cares, though? When he gives you 6,700, he opens up the entire board for you, just finding that one guard play. Plus, the 4K guard plays just aren't exactly like the 4K forward plays where, at least there's Herbert Jones. At least you have a guy like DeAndre Hunter. You have a number of these guys you can land on in the same game. And he's just kind of there's nothing close to Terry Rozier on this slate in the mid-range.
Yeah, I think when we look at some of the guards in terms of where he's priced, there's aren't really comparable guys to me. So Terry Rozier just kind of by default makes it into the mix. I guess Bogdan Bogdanovic, because of his guard and forward eligibility on DK, he's somebody else that makes into a lot of honest, but he's also in a different salary range. We've got Terry Rozier on DK is 6,800. Bogdanovic is 5,700. But I do like getting to Bogdanovic. A lot of those Atlanta guards, I think, make sense beyond Trae Young. Bogdanovic, Kevin Huerter.
I am very worried about Bogdanovic. He is my absolute fade of the slate. So, I'm getting to a little DeJounte Murray. I have almost no Bogdanovic because I think Bogdanovic has been playing the second usage. He's been the guy who's come off the bench. And Trae Young, he's played a lot of minutes alongside him. Don't get me wrong, but in a one game go out to win it scenario, I don't think Trae Young's going to be all right with Bogdanovic playing on the ball very much. Like, this is just me thinking about it from a real basketball perspective. Trae Young is going to be in the pick and roll constantly. Could he be kicking it out and, get 15 assists and Bogdanovic gets hot and just blows up the slate? Sure. But he's 43% on DraftKings. I have almost zero. And so Bogdanovic, there's a reason I haven't said his name yet. He's like the one guy that if he goes off, you will not see me at the top of leaderboards tonight.
I feel differently than you on Bogdanovich. You can make a case he's too popular, which is fine. He's 43% owned on DraftKings. FanDuel right now, Bogdanovich is projected for 23% ownership. So lots different. He's also 7,100. But I also think TLC just falls out of the rotation in this spot. And I think all of those minutes go right to Bogdanovich. He's still one of the best players on this team. I think they're going to play a more condensed rotation. And Bogdanovich has scored a lot of points in a hurry. He's a very good fantasy producer. It's an easy matchup against the Charlotte Hornets. And I do think there's a spot where we see him play extended playing time. So with that in mind, I feel a little bit different than you on Bogdanovich. Is he just like a total zero for you?
I have 5% on FanDuel and 0% on DraftKings.
All right. It's a strong stand.
Yeah.
I appreciate the boldness.
It's a 2-game slate. And, I'm trying to win a tournament. I'm not trying to come in second. And you can play a little bit of everybody. Like, I'm sure there's a path where if I was playing a full 150 today, I would have, 15%, 20%, but I'm just flat out saying, and we just got the starting lineup. He's not in it. That would be the only thing that would have changed anything. It's exactly what we expected it to be. Young, Herter, Hunter, Gallinari, and Capella. If you had seen him in it, you could have projected him for 40, but I have him for 33 minutes right now. And again, this is just what is the court time going to look like alongside Trae Young for almost all of it, because Trae Young's going to play as much of this game as he humanly possibly can. We both talked about him playing over 40 minutes, and I think that that's a pretty much certainty as long as he's not in foul trouble or injury. So I get a little bit worried that this isn't exactly a spot that I want to be overinvested. So I just took him off the board.
All right, we got a super chat here from Olrat14. Are you guys fading the Chicago White Sox Seattle Mariners game? I am not. I don't feel great about the weather in that spot, but I am taking the risk on a 4-game baseball slate today. As for the second part of the question, NBA question, will Josh Primo play enough today? Josh Primo is not somebody I'm really getting exposure to. Are you getting yourself to Josh Primo?
No, I thought about it because he's somebody, but he's just such a bad fantasy producer that it just kind of removed anything. We went back to this point. Like, even if you get extended run from Josh Primo, what does that run look like? It's not very good. At 3,400 on DraftKings, you're basically saying, be the last piece in, get to 15, and have everybody else in my lineup smash. I'm more inclined to not take the 0 in some scenarios, or, not a 0 specifically. He's projected for 15 fantasy points, but even that feels a little bit aggressive here at Awesemo for me to land on Josh Primo. I think, we have the sharpest projections that there are. And so if I'm just getting 15 at 3,400 on this slate, I'm using up a roster spot, and I'd just much prefer to upgrade it. I'm lower on DeJounte Murray. He's the most expensive player on the slate. Makes it a lot easier for me to land everywhere else on the board.
We have a super chat from my boy 08. How much Delon Wright are you getting to? Less than 5% on both slates for me. I mean, both sites, FanDuel and DraftKings. Once again, Eric might have more of Delon Wright. I think this is where him and I differ a little bit. I think his minutes get cut in this situation. They go to Bogdanovich. I assume Eric's probably projected it differently based on what he said about Bogdanovich before. How are you handling Delon Wright?
Yeah, I have him for 19 minutes, and that's going to make him in play at 3,800 on FanDuel. That's part of why I'm not landing on Graham, is that the better game environment, there's paths to Wright getting on the floor in a number of ways, whereas Graham, CJ McCollum is just dominating all the ball handling duties, the usage, as Trae Young is as well. But you might get a few of those minutes where I would assume if a smart coach is going to have Bogdanovich on the floor for every minute that Trae Young's not going to be out there. But Delon Wright is going to be the guy subbing in for Trae Young for a couple minutes there. He can play alongside him. They've been playing a lot more alongside each other as the season's gone on. We've seen low 20s minutes now for him the last 3. Again, not to say that there's a crazy amount of upside there. I don't think he gets completely trimmed off the top the way that, Jordan McLaughlin just disappeared from the rotation yesterday. But 3,800, I think that there's paths that can work out for you a little bit more. And I'm going to find paths for Bogdanovich for failure. I have to be projecting him for some minutes. So 19, and that kind of is my final answer.
All right, we've got some more questions to answer in our Discord channel. By the way, if you guys want access to all the tools that we have and access to stuff like our Discord channel, we do have really cheap ways to get involved. One thing is you can join our MVP program by texting MVP to 1-660-656-4417. Our MVP members currently get 50% off an Awesemo weekly pass subscription. You could, once again, get into the MVP program by texting MVP to 1-660-656-4417. You could also check out that information below in the description box. So let's try to hit on as many of these questions as we can. First, Mr. Moneybags, Plumlee and Harrell in the same lineup, a bad idea on DK? Yes.
Yes.
All right, we're both on the same page there. He also, by the way, he tagged Jordan that one. Jordan, I'm not going to make you answer that either, but
I want Jordan takes. Can we get Jordan takes? TAEKS. Can we get some Jordan takes?
If we had more time and not a million questions to get to, perhaps. Right. But
okay,
we're getting loaded. People loving asking us questions for the 2 game slate. I dig it. What are our favorite? Also, Jordan also tagged on this one. Is this a bit in our Discord channel that I'm not aware of? Perrin is asking me and Jordan Klein, what are our favorite top 3 plays for under 4K for GPP on DraftKings? There are not that many guys that I like under 4K, but let's see. Who do I have the most exposure to under 4K? Montrezl Harrell's one. I guess by default, Delon Wright and Larry Nance. But those are not guys I like all that much either. The one that I really do like getting to in tournaments is Montrezl Harrell. Nobody else that I love. Who are the 3 guys under 4K to get the most exposure to on DK?
Kongwu, we've talked about him quite a bit. Larry Nance at 3,600 is another guy that I'm landing on, and Montrezl Harrell. So 2 centers and a power forward.
We have a question from Governaut in our Discord channel. Last man in on DK, Lonnie Walker, Mason Plumlee, or Okongwu? That's Plumlee amongst those guys for me.
Plumlee, yeah. I mean, Plumlee, we talked about quite a bit. And nearly a third of the time he's showing up optimal. That was just kind of a surprising number to me. But once again, that's just trusting the tools and knowing that as good as I might think that I am sometimes, the tools are better. So Mason Plumlee, I think, has to be a part. I've got 35% of him. I'm a little bit over the field.
Let's see. We got a question, another super chat here from Jeff Campbell. FanDuel GPP, Okongwu and PJ, I assume it's PJ Washington, or Plumlee and Gallinari. Okongwu and PJ Washington, or Plumlee and Gallinari. That is Plumlee and Gallinari for me. Which side are you on?
I mean, that's the more secure route for sure. I mean, I've talked about Okongwu how many times now here. Again, it's just a stand to try to get some more of him, because when he gets on a floor, he could put up 24 fantasy points in 16 minutes. And, I'm even questioning just taking this rule out that I have as I'm looking at my lineups right now, finishing everything up on DK. There's some viability to just keeping them both together because, Clint Capella plays 32 minutes under 7K. He can still smash against Charlotte here. I just think it's more than likely you're going to have one be detrimental to the other to have them both. There's definite negative correlation there, but I mean, I've talked about Okongwu how many times. I'm just taking a larger position on him than most in the field because it feels like a guy that when it works out, I'm going to win tournaments.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We had another question in Discord chat. Oh, this was a follow-up from Governaut. He's saying, if he already has Harrell in the lineup, would we rather play Lonnie Walker or Okongwu? I prefer Okongwu to Lonnie Walker.
I prefer Okongwu to Lonnie Walker by a drastic mile.
And by the way, we just got word the start of the White Sox Mariners game will be delayed due to rain. Adds a little bit of extra risk to that game, but who knows what happens there. I tell people I control the weather. I don't actually, though. The
crappy part too is that we're on a show and those lineups are now locked. So now you have to go through and try to swap them. This is just a mess.
It's a delay though. The game isn't canceled. It's delayed.
I know, but it feels brutal. I just basically full stacked. I talked about this morning where I just kind of full stacked both sides of it and then didn't have any one-offs from the game.
All right, let's try to round up forwards. We finally got all the questions out of the way. Eric, which forwards are you getting the most to on DraftKings? And then we'll hit on FanDuel afterwards because they're a little different.
So Herbert Jones is impossible to get away from for me on this slate. We've seen the rookie play just massive minutes for this team down the stretch. He's out there for defensive purposes, but at least you're getting the floor time there. And he's just going back to the boom bust tool like I constantly have been throughout this show, because this is different than when we have so much news to be reacting to, especially the last 2 weeks of the season. Everything's pretty set in stone. We have an idea about these rotations, so you can make really aggressive spots. You kind of know what you're getting into. And Herbert Jones, 4,500, he's underpriced for a situation where he should be playing as many minutes as he possibly can handle because of what they need from him on the defensive end. So I have him projected for 27 fantasy points, and at 4,500, that is putting him in. He's my highest owned player on the entire slate, and I'm just fine with it because the boom bust tools got him optimal nearly 42%, 43% of the time, 4.3% of leverage going his direction. So that is the guy right out of the gate. And then Brandon Ingram, who I just think this field is way too low on. I mean, I get that he's been out and they've been very hesitant to put him out there and run minutes. He hasn't played in over a week, but that's because they were setting him up for this game to be successful. And he's under 50% on FanDuel. I know Miles Bridges is an absolute smash over there as well. Probably the most no-brainer play of the entire slate on FanDuel, under 7K. But Brandon Ingram in tournaments is a guy that I just want to be prioritizing on both sites. And I don't think he's being appropriately owned. He should be north of 50%. And so I'm taking an aggressive stand going his direction.
I think you kind of hit on most of the guys that I'm most exposed to at the position. And then also, you know, a lot of these forwards also have guard eligibility. So it's a lot of players, you know, Bogdanovich, Kevin Huerter, Devin Vassell, guys that we've already talked about a little bit.
Can I ask you this one? Because I think this is kind of an important one. Not just, I'm selfish. I'll ask the question. Who do you prioritize the most out of Hunter, Huerter, and Gallinari?
Hunter, Huerter, and Gallo. That is Hunter. I feel the best about his minutes, and he's the cheapest of the three.
Okay, I'm on, or I had talked about it, I'm on Huerter a lot more than what I was expecting for this slate, but I think I've always kind of projected him a little bit higher because he does have a little bit more standard deviation variability to his fantasy outcomes. He's just a guy that can get hot and doesn't really get appreciation for doing as such. He can put up 14, but also the guy can legitimately put up 40 when he's going. They play through him quite a bit. Trae Young looks for him in the offense and seems to trust him. He's a great shooter. So I think Kevin Huerter is somebody that when it works out for you, I just want to be overweight too. So I'm a little bit higher there. Another guy with positive leverage in the boom bust tool.
Yeah, you're not going to like what I'm going to say here. I think some of his minutes go to Bogdanovich today.
I was going to say, I know Bogdanovich is going to be the bane of my existence today, but it is what it is. Murray can play okay. I have enough shares of Murray where I'll be okay. If Bogdanovich plays well, I'm just not going to survive. It's just not going to be possible.
Couple more super chats to get to. First from Rosso Music. Tiers question: PJ Washington, Kevin Huerter, Danilo Gallinari, or Jackson Hayes. So Washington, Huerter, Gallo, or Hayes. I believe that's Gallo for me.
It's Huerter for me.
That is Gallo for me.
Yep, definitely Huerter for me.
We have a super chat from CJB33 playing on Yahoo. DeJounte Murray, Bogdan Bogdanovich, Cody Martin. I can't imagine wanting to play Cody Martin today. Or Keldon Johnson, Terry Rozier, Valanciunas, Johnson, Rozier, Valanciunas. I do not think Cody Martin is necessary today.
No, I don't think so. He's 4,100 on FanDuel. I thought about it a little bit, but didn't go that direction. Looking at Yahoo, Keldon Johnson, we haven't really talked about. I know the boss man was pretty darn high on him before, and we've seen some increased opportunity for him. Olympic gold medalist Keldon Johnson. I guess we got to put some respect on the name, but I'm all right being overweight to him. If you wanted to go that direction, I can't play everybody, and I'm playing more of everybody because I'm just avoiding that one piece in Bogdanovich. So I'll go to the Keldon Johnson, Terry Rozier, Joe Val, just because I'm not going to tell you to do something that I'm not doing. And Bogdanovich is in the other one.
Super chat from Saif Din. Hi. Hello. Thank you for the super chat. Plumlee or Okongwu? That is Plumlee for me.
Plumlee, straight up. Again, I'm pretty high on both of them, so it's kind of either or. Okongwu's way lower owned, but Plumlee's the better play.
Ryan Nelson 02, Kevin Huerter, so hot right now. Quote from Eric, direct quote from Eric, I believe.
No, Ryan, not now.
What did you say?
That was a Mugatu.
By the way, I have that movie is hilarious. I've not watched it in so long. I was talking about Anchorman the other day, and I'll just say this really quick because we have other stuff to talk about with the slate approaching. But a lot of these movies that I liked a lot as kids, they kind of got ruined me when the sequels came out. The sequels were so bad, I kind of lost interest in the original, like Zoolander 2, Anchorman 2, kind of the same boat. But I should rewatch Zoolander. It's been a minute. We have some questions in our premium Discord channel to get back to. First from Koala 421, Collins or Washington in a GPP. I prefer PJ Washington to Zach Collins.
I prefer by a lands, like they're not on the same continent, PJ Washington.
We have a super chat once again from Nadier55. Ingram, Cody Martin versus McCollum and Hunter on FanDuel. McCollum and Hunter easy.
McCollum and Hunter.
Super chat from Charles. Hey guys, DK showdown. Who do you go with for captain in the Atlanta-Charlotte game? Raw points, Trae LaMelo, or cheap fitting studs. So I did run showdown lineups because I thought there was a chance that we would have to talk about that. We didn't end up having the time to get to it, but my optimal lineup does have Trae Young as the captain. For you, I don't know. Have you built showdown lineups? If not, it's fine. And
I didn't. I usually, when we're on the show, I try to just stick to the main slate because that's when most people are asking about. And then I'll do the showdown always for the evening. So I control Joey Corman, who actually has been smashing. So can't troll him anymore. Congratulations, Joey.
Yeah, we can.
You're still a damn dirty liar, but it is what it is. I would imagine that it would be almost impossible for me not to land on Ball or Young in just about every single lineup because I think there's enough value. I would definitely be playing one of those two in just about every captain play. You want to get those guys. It's so much easier to build around the guys that score the most amount of fantasy points. I would go contrarian. I would definitely have some Miles Bridges. Just looking at the ownership here for a quick second. Yeah, I'd definitely be over on Miles Bridges as well, but he would be a decent captain spot. But just for optimal wise, Trae Young, no doubt about it.
All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about at the forwards? If not, we could round up the center.
Yeah,
Centers shouldn't take too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the center position, we've talked at length already about Mason Plumlee and Montrezl Harrell, both guys that I think are worth getting to. I prefer Harrell. I think you said you prefer Plumlee over the two.
Yeah, I do. Plumlee is just a guy that I feel the most secure. And again, you are correct. You are dead correct in saying that when you're right about Harrell, you're probably going to get paid off for it. They have almost identical optimal rates right now, but I just feel a lot more secure in the minutes. And again, I'm playing Harrell in quite a few lineups as well, but I'm not to 30% of him. I'm over 30% on Mason Plumlee. So I get it. I just feel like I need to play a little bit more Plumlee. I could just imagine Locke coming up in 6 minutes and we'll see, he's 3,500 and I feel like he's a guy that opens up the entire board for people. So I'm hoping that doesn't end up working out. Something just tells me he might end up a little bit higher owned than I think.
Super chat from CJB33. Who is our favorite $10 player on Yahoo? I do not think it's necessary to go all the way down to $10 on Yahoo, but it seems you're in desperate need of finding somebody for $10. If you need to have somebody, it would be Kelly Oubre for me, but I don't think it's necessary on this particular slate. And just the way the pricing is soft on Yahoo, you don't have to play somebody at $10. Do you have somebody off the top of your head that you like for $10 on Yahoo? Delon Wright is, by the way.
I mean, Cody Martin would be the other guy you could take a shot on, but I just don't really want to. Let me see. If Okongwu is $10, he is not, is he? He's 11. So yeah. That would be cheating to say him.
Nobody. What about Wright? Because I know you mentioned.
Oh yeah, Delon Wright. Okay, I didn't see him down there. I was just looking at that first game. I was still grouped on Showdown. So
do you prefer Wright or Oubre?
It's a great question. I mean, they're both projected around the same minutes, and on other sites, you're seeing Oubre inflated and Delon Wright a little bit cheaper, and it fits more of what I'm going towards against Bogdanovich. But at the identical number on a spot where no other variables, I think I would definitely pick Oubre.
Super chat from Deacon to the Legend. 4,000 left for power forward on FanDuel. Montrezl Harrell or Larry Nance for single entry. I prefer Montrezl Harrell. Eric Harrell or Nance.
I mean, it's definitely Harrell straight up, but Larry Nance needs to be in tournaments. I have some tournament exposure.
All right. I think we have caught up on all of the questions for now. So let's hit back on the centers and try to round up the position. Of the guys we have not talked about, and we've kind of covered all of them at this point, although we haven't talked about Valanciunas and Jakob Poeltl. To me, if I'm paying up for one of them, I do prefer Poeltl just because of the salary savings he comes with. Although overall in that upper tier of centers, I do like Clint Capella the most. Capella, Poeltl, Joe Val. What do you make of that trio?
Yeah, it's really hard to get up to some of these guys. I prefer getting to Capella. Poeltl now 300 less. On FanDuel, there's a little bit more of a discussion point because you're only playing one of these guys. And I think it behooves you to play a little bit of the ownership game between him and Poeltl. Let me just see where that ended up landing at as I'm refreshing so that I can actually give you the accurate information. It landed 25% Poeltl, 20% Capella. I mean, if you're going to give me Capella for less, I'll just take Capella between the two of them. $400 difference. I prefer Capella. I think they're projected just about exactly the same. Jonas Valanciunas feels like the guy, though, in tournaments on FanDuel that I'm just way, way over on. I have 55% of him. And the whole purpose is I don't think many people are going to be building lineups that direction. Yeah, he's 25%. He's the third most popular center, but I feel like a lot of other people are going to be going and paying up to just get up to DeJounte Murray. And if I'm going to be lower on him, who has to succeed? I have to unlock kind of the other pieces, not just at the guard position, but at center, the most expensive guy. I got to use that money. So Jonas Valanciunas, just because I'm lower on Murray, is actually inflating his ownership for me.
Is there any other centers or just any players in general? We just have a couple minutes left to go into lock. Anything that we have not talked about that you want to get out before we get to lock?
No, we talked about the Okongwu tournament dart, and I think that that's just something that I'm pretty steadfast I'm going to be doing. The game environment's just better here. Charlotte and Atlanta, there's paths where if Capella fails, he goes completely nuts and you're going to need him. He's also cheap enough at 3,800. You don't need to completely write him off together, even though I am, because I did have that rule in place. So it is what it is. But otherwise, we covered it all. There's really nothing else pretty dormant below Okongwu and for sure below Harrell.
All right. With that in mind, guys, don't go anywhere. We're going to be talking about PrizePicks for the next, 10 minutes or so, wherever the game's lock. Who knows if it's like yesterday, we're in the middle of talking about, and it said, the games were going to lock in like 6 minutes. And then all of a sudden, oh, it's locked. The game had already started. So we're going to try to get out some PrizePicks picks to you guys. Also, if you're signing up for the first time, use the promo code Awesemo. You get yourself up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit and 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So, Eric, let's try to find some of our favorite PrizePicks plays. Also, guys, once again, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I hope you guys stick around for the next few minutes, but if not, hit that like and sub on the way out the door. What is it that you are liking on PrizePicks for today's game? One other thing I want to point out, sorry, you can take another second to look these up. They're currently running a special on Joel Embiid, over 0.5 points for the game he has against the Toronto Raptors. How many points is Joel Embiid going to score? I'm not sure. Probably more than 0.5 though. So you want to include that prop in some player cards, because that's definitely something that's going to be beneficial to you. For today's games though, what stands out to you?
It's like in Austin Powers. All stay. You have 17, sir. Or you have, 20 beats your 5. It was 5 that he had. It's like, yeah, I'll take the over on that Joel Embiid one. That seems like a sharp enough play.
Same.
Yeah, seems like an all right spot. Looking at the board, again, Odd Shopper, sorting by projected win percentage. That's such an easy way to do it. Plus, we now have the parlay builder over on Odd Shopper as well. So if you guys go over there and click on the parlay builder, PrizePicks is the first thing that comes up. You have the PrizePicks prop party. It is no doubt about it. The over on Brandon Ingram, somebody that I am very bullish on for today. I think that he's just going to be on the floor a lot more. And it looks like, 24.5 in terms of props or for points. That's a pretty aggressive number. It looks like the under is actually looking all right in that direction, but the over of 6 rebounds, 80% expected win percentage. You rarely get 80% expected win percentages when you're talking about a prop that's out there on the board. This is one of the best numbers to attack that I've seen in a long time. So, I was just talking before the show about how most numbers are pretty efficient. This is a very inefficient number for me.
Yeah. And by the way, one more thing I want to ask you too, as people are kind of chatting about the baseball slate. Did you end up leaving the White Sox Mariners game in?
Yeah, I did. I'm just having the stacks. And again, it's just because I don't, and it's so weird because it's a 3-game slate. I feel like you want to have lineups where you do have one-offs and you're doing different things, but it feels like because I was just never going to roster Keuchel in a million years, that it's pretty simple for me to just keep some Mariners stacks and move on with my day.
So for me, here's the main reason. I don't know whether the game's going to play or not. I'm not going to pretend that I know or control the weather in any way, but I do think that based on the reactions to people, we're going to see a lot of people just start to take that game out of their player pool. So I think it's going to go under-owned. And that's the main reason for me that I want to stick with it. We'll see.
I say this a lot on shows, and we haven't had an opportunity where it was like a flat out weather thing. Just pretend like the team scored 0 runs. Like that's how mentally I'm able to just play a lot more of a game that has weather concerns. Yeah, those lineups are going to be dead. I just imagine that I stacked up a 5-man and they scored 0 runs. Happens all the time. So who really gives a shit? I go massively overweight in these kind of spots usually, but I'm not going to be able to do that today.
Yeah, so it's a 4-game slate, and is it going to be unowned? No, but I think it's lower owned than it would be otherwise. So that's why I decided to keep it in. I just wanted to bring that up because I know people are trying to finalize, trying to know what to do with that situation. But let's find a couple more PrizePicks props to give to the people before we end this show, and hopefully before this game just abruptly starts like what happened yesterday. I think we talked about which props we like for like 5 minutes while the game was actually being played. Let's see. So NBA props. What stands out to you from what could be anything? I'm looking at some of the fantasy scores also, and there's just one thing that I wanted to point out about some of the playing times for the guys here. With the playing time really being concentrated in the way that we talked about before, I do like some of the overs for some of these studs, like LaMelo Ball. I think over 45 fantasy points makes sense. Trae Young over 51 fantasy points. Also correlation, if you're taking Trae Young and LaMelo Ball on the same player card and taking the overs for both of them. What is it that you like that we haven't talked about yet?
I think that's kind of it from the NBA board. I'm going to just do this because I want to make people money and I want to talk it out with you. If we're worried about possible in-game risk, another way you could hedge some of your lineups and talking about from a DFS angle is taking Robbie Ray and Dallas Keuchel and playing the pitcher fantasy score unders 30.5 and 19.5. If you guys decide to roll with this game, one of the things, if there's any kind of a in-game delay, they're not going to come back out and pitch more than likely. It looks like it's going to be on and off again, rain the entire night. So you get to play cross-sport parlays. That's one of my favorite parts about playing on PrizePicks is it's not just labeling it NBA. It's not just anything else. These are props straight up. It doesn't matter what it is. It has the exact same payout. So you're looking at any kind of winners. I think shorting Robbie Ray and Dallas Keuchel might be something that I do here in the next 5 minutes.
So here's a pitcher prop I like quite a bit. Corbin Burns over 6.5 strikeouts.
Oh, yeah.
I like Corbin Burns a lot. I think a lot of people are aware of that.
You have a house because of Corbin Burns.
But it's also like Corbin Burns is ridiculously good. And I understand that he was not good in his first start of the season. But that aside, Corbin Burns, I don't think has any kind of real pitch count restrictions. He pretty regularly had over-unders of 8.5, 9.5 strikeouts last year, sometimes even double digits. He should be able to dice up this Orioles offense. The game's locking right now, but either way, over 6.5 strikeouts, I think that is a ridiculously low number. So I like taking the over there. And also, we talk about cross-referencing some of these numbers with sports books. Corbin Burns does have an over-under of 6.5 Ks at sports books, but the over is like minus 160 now. So just think of it from that standpoint. Also, this is even money on the over 6.5, where in general we're looking at the that being a number that is pretty heavily juiced towards the over. Any other thoughts that we have here? If not, it's time to sign off and cry.
Wait, what? Where did that?
We're not going to be getting attention anymore. I just wait for my next show to start.
Contrary to popular belief, I don't need this in terms of my ego or something else.
Yeah, I do. Every time. Here's what I do in between shows.
Cool.
I look to check how many likes we got.
Okay. It's part of your job.
I check the backlog data and make sure that people subscribed while we were doing the show. Mm-hmm. And then I reread the entire live chat and make sure nobody said anything mean about us.
Okay. I already blocked one guy. It's fine. No big deal.
Anyway, the point is you guys need to like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. For myself, Eric says he doesn't care. I don't believe him. He does. He cares even more than I do. So do it for Eric. Do it for Jordan. Do it for me. Other than that, guys, good luck. Enjoy the basketball games, and we'll see you tomorrow.